Please. I'm begging you. Save my daughter. Victoria Calderon, usually untouchable, composed, and wrapped in quiet luxury, was now kneeling beside 8-year-old Elara Winslow's hospital bed, tears slipping down her face. The entire room fell silent at the sight of a billionaire mother pleading before a sick child. Elara, pale and confused, didn't fully understand the crisis, only the desperation in Victoria's eyes. So she nodded. A small, innocent nod that would open the door to the darkest days of her young life. Hello everyone, and welcome to Vale of Hearts, a place where love finds its way through the quietest corners of the soul. Today, let's listen to the story of a little girl whose kindness saved a life, and unknowingly changed her own forever. 8-year-old Elara Winslow had always believed hospitals were places where people eventually walked out smiling. But that night, as she lay on a stiff white bed with an IV in her arm, the world didn't feel kind or hopeful. Her stomach still twisted from hours of vomiting, food poisoning, the doctors said. Nothing too dangerous, but enough to drain the life from her small, fragile body. Miss Holbrook, her caretaker from the orphanage, sat close by, brushing the girl's damp hair from her forehead. You're safe, sweetheart, she whispered. Just rest. Everything will be okay. Outside the room, the usual hum of hospital noise carried on, rolling carts, clicking heels, muffled voices. Yet among the chaos, one sound shattered the night more sharply than all the rest. A scream. A woman's scream, raw, breaking, desperate. Somebody help her. Please, she's losing too much blood. Doctors rushed past the doorway. Elara lifted her head weakly, watching shadows scramble across the hallway floor. Miss Holbrook stood, worried but trying not to show it, and peered outside. Only moments later, a stretcher was wheeled through the corridor. On it lay Serena Calderon, a girl close to Elara's age, her skin ghostly pale beneath the fluorescent lights. Tubes ran across her arms, her dress soaked with crimson. The sight made even the nurses flinch. Behind her came two figures, sharp, elegant silhouettes carved by wealth and power. Alexander Calderon, tall, commanding, face set in stone. And Victoria Calderon, trembling in a sleek silk blouse now stained with her daughter's blood. Their world was collapsing in front of them. A doctor's voice echoed down the hall. We've used everything we have, but her blood type is Rh-null. We don't have a single unit available in the entire hospital. Without a match, she won't make it. Victoria grabbed the doctor's arm, her jewels glittering beneath trembling fingers. There has to be someone. Anyone. Check every patient, every record. Don't tell me my daughter is dying because of a shortage. Her voice cracked on the last word. Minutes felt like hours as doctors combed through the registry. The hallway grew painfully quiet, everyone too afraid to breathe, afraid that any sound might push the child closer to death. Then came the moment that changed everything. A nurse rushed in with a file. We found a match. A perfect one. Alexander straightened immediately. Who? The nurse hesitated, then lifted her eyes. Elara Winslow. Miss Holbrook turned sharply toward the nurse, stunned. What? She's just a child. And she's sick. But she's stable, the nurse whispered. And she's Serena's only chance. The decision came with the weight of fate. Within seconds, Victoria Calderon stepped into Elara's room, her knees hitting the cold tile floor with a thud that echoed like thunder. Please, her voice broke as she leaned over Elara's bed. I'm begging you. Save my daughter. You're the only one who can. Tears slid down her cheeks, washing away the image of the untouchable billionaire socialite. In that moment, she was only a mother with nothing left to offer but desperation. Elara blinked up at her. Startled. Is she going to die? Her soft voice trembled. Victoria swallowed hard. If you don't help her, yes. Miss Holbrook reached for the girl's hand, clearly torn. Elara, you don't have to, but Elara's heart, fragile yet unbearably kind, spoke before fear could. I want to help, she whispered. It wasn't bravery. It was an obligation. It was simply compassion, the kind only a child could offer without hesitation. Doctors moved quickly. The contrast between the two beds, the dying heiress and the frail orphan, painted a scene no one could forget. Elara, still pale and weak, squeezed Miss Holbrook's hand as they prepared her for donation. It'll be over soon, the caretaker said softly. You're doing something very good. Elara forced a tiny smile. I hope she gets better. The procedure drained her, leaving her body exhausted, but the results were immediate. Serena's vitals began to stabilize. Her breathing steadied. Color slowly returned to her cheeks. Whispers spread through the hospital, the orphan girl with the rarest blood in the world, the miracle child who saved the billionaire's daughter. When Serena finally opened her eyes the next morning, Victoria collapsed with relief. Alexander exhaled a breath he'd been holding for hours. They embraced their daughter like they might never let go again. Later that afternoon, the Calderons visited Elara's room. Victoria took her hand gently. You've given us back our world, she said, voice still hoarse. Alexander nodded solemnly. We owe you more than we can ever repay. To Miss Holbrook's shock, the next words came heavy, deliberate, and life-changing. We want to bring Elara home with us, Victoria said. We want to adopt her. Elara froze, hope flickering across her tired eyes. A family. A real family. The thing she had prayed for every birthday, every holiday, every lonely night. Miss Holbrook's breath caught. Are you certain? Alexander placed a hand over his heart. She saved our daughter. She belongs with us now. But beneath that promise, behind the gratitude and the polished smiles, lay an unspoken truth neither Elara nor Miss Holbrook could see. The Calderons had not come for love. They had come for her blood, the rarest lifeline their daughter might ever need again. And little Elara Winslow, innocent and hopeful, stepped toward them believing she had finally found a home, unaware she had just walked into the shadows of a destiny far darker than she could imagine. The days after that desperate night blurred into one another for Elara Winslow. The cold reality that had been veiled by hope was now fully exposed. The Calderon family did not want her as their daughter, they wanted her as a blood bank. For a brief moment, when Victoria Calderon had knelt beside her hospital bed, pleading for just one drop of her rare blood, Elara had felt a flicker of belonging. But that flicker quickly turned to ashes. The towering Calderon mansion was a fortress of silent cruelty. Its lavish halls echoed with a cold indifference that seeped into every corner of Elara's life. Her adoptive parents, Alexander and Victoria Calderon, never saw her as more than a tool, a means to sustain their precious daughter, Serena. Victoria's icy gaze rarely softened. The woman's smiles were reserved for Serena, her golden-haired, flawless daughter who ruled their world with the arrogance of a princess. To Elara, Victoria was a queen of shadows, cold, commanding, and merciless. You exist for one purpose, Elara. Protect Serena. Do not forget that. Victoria's voice was quiet, but the weight behind it pressed down harder than any shout. Alexander, the family's powerful CEO, was even less tolerant. His presence was an imposing shadow, his disappointment palpable whenever Elara faltered, which was often. The young girl's days were a grueling dance, her footsteps silent in the halls, her voice barely a whisper. She was made to attend the same elite school as Serena, but the comparison ended there. Serena was the star, the favored child, Elara was the shadow trailing behind, the silent servant. Serena's cruelty was sharp and deliberate. She wielded power over Elara like a weapon, turning every moment into a test of endurance. Come on, Elara, can't you do better? Serena sneered one afternoon in the sunlit schoolyard, her voice dripping with disdain. If you're so special, why do you always mess up? Behind her polished smile lurked venom. Serena had built an empire of torment around Elara, her every taunt calculated to wound. Damien Calderon, her adoptive older brother, was no better. Proud and arrogant, he delighted in publicly humiliating Elara. His favorite pastime was recording her stumbles, her rare moments of vulnerability, and uploading them to social media with mocking captions. Look at this, Elara can't even walk properly in heels. Is she really family material? Damien's cruel laughter echoed through the halls, shared by his cronies in the school. Elara tried to disappear beneath the weight of their cruelty, but it only made her more visible as the victim. The other students, influenced by Serena's whispers and Damien's public mockery, joined the chorus of scorn. Rumors spread like wildfire. She's just a charity case. They only keep her around for her blood. I heard she's not even really Calderon. Each word was a knife twisting deeper into Elara's fragile spirit. She stopped speaking much. Her once bright eyes dulled, her smiles faded, and her body grew thin under the stress and constant fear. The spark of hope she once held was flickering, threatened to be snuffed out entirely. At school, Elara sat alone at lunch tables, her books acting as shields from the hostile stares and whispered gossip. Teachers noticed her withdrawal but said little, often mistaking her silence for shyness. Back home, things were worse. The Calderons were relentless in their demands. Elara was subjected to frequent, painful blood donations. No matter how weak she became, they took more. They told her it was for Serena, for family, for survival. But it was only for themselves. Another donation, Elara. Don't make this difficult. Victoria's voice held no room for negotiation. Each needle prick was a reminder of her worth being measured in pints and blood types, not love or family bonds. Despite the torment, Elara harbored a fragile hope that one day she might be accepted as a true member of the Calderon family. She clung to the idea that beneath the cold exterior, someone, maybe Serena, maybe Victoria, would come to see her as more than just a donor. But reality was ruthless. One evening, as she lay in her small, lonely room, staring at the ceiling, she whispered to herself, maybe one day, maybe someday, they'll love me. But deep down, she knew it was a lie. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sharp, mocking laughter drifting from Serena's room down the hall. The words echoed in her mind, "You're nothing but a blood bank." And that was the cruel truth. The years marched forward, and Elara's childhood was stolen piece by piece. She endured the endless bullying, the cold neglect, and the painful blood draws. The once vibrant girl was now a pale shadow, her spirit bent but not broken. But even in her darkest moments, Elara's mind sharpened. She remembered every sneer, every cruel joke, every moment she was pushed aside like a worthless object. Her heart hardened, not into bitterness, but into steel. She started to watch. To learn. She observed the cold strategies of the Calderon family, their whispered deals, their ruthless pursuit of power. She discovered how deeply corrupt their business was, a facade of success masking illegal dealings, money laundering, and manipulation. Serena and Damien weren't just tormentors, they were heirs to a criminal empire. Elara began to document everything, secret meetings, hushed conversations, and late-night phone calls. "They think I'm weak, but I'm stronger than they ever imagined," she vowed silently. Her resilience was fueled not only by the desire to survive but by a quiet determination to one day claim justice, her justice. Instead of a celebration, Elara was given a cold, cruel ultimatum. Victoria Calderon summoned her to the grand living room, flanked by Alexander, Damien, and Serena. Their faces were stone-cold, void of any warmth. "You've served your purpose, Elara," Alexander announced flatly. "Your blood reserves are sufficient. It's time for you to leave." The words hit Elara like a physical blow. "Please, just give me a little more time. I'll find a place, I promise." Her voice trembled as tears welled up. Victoria's expression twisted into something almost cruelly amused. "You should have thought about that before you got used." Without another word, servants began throwing Elara's few possessions out the front door. Her favorite books, a worn-out doll, clothes, everything that connected her to a sense of self was discarded like trash. Elara stood barefoot on the cold marble floor, heart shattering with every thud of a box hitting the steps. The rain started just as she stepped outside, soaking her fragile frame through her thin dress. Dragging her suitcase behind her, Elara walked aimlessly through the downpour, the storm outside mirroring the tempest inside her soul. And then, everything faded to black. The cold rain fell relentlessly, drumming against the marble steps of the Calderon estate. Inside, the air was even colder, steeped in ruthless finality. "Elara," Alexander Calderon's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "You have served your purpose. Your value to us is gone." Elara's heart shattered at those words. They weren't just cold, they were merciless. A verdict that shattered every ounce of hope she had held for a single day's worth of belonging. "Please," Elara begged, her voice trembling. "Just a few more days. I'll find somewhere to go, I swear." Victoria Calderon's lips curled into a thin smile, cruel and mocking. "There's no more time, Elara. Your chapter here is finished." Without another word, servants began dragging her meager belongings to the front steps. Boxes, suitcases, and scattered clothes, her entire life packed up and tossed outside like garbage. Elara stood in the doorway, rain soaking through her thin dress, eyes wide with disbelief. "Please," she whispered again, tears streaming down her cheeks. Just one more night, but the door slammed shut with a finality that echoed in her soul. She was locked out. Cast out. Outside, the storm matched the turmoil inside her. The relentless rain blurred her vision, and the cold bit through her skin as she pulled her suitcase behind her, the wheels scraping against the wet pavement. Her body felt heavy, weakened by years of blood loss, emotional abuse, and exhaustion. Yet, despite everything, she walked, step by step, away from the only home she'd ever known, and the family that had never truly been hers. The world around her was a blur of darkness and wet concrete. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and twist like the pain inside her. Elara's breath came in shallow gasps. Her limbs trembled, and the ache in her chest was overwhelming. Her thoughts raced, memories of the past 10 years flooded her mind. The cold neglect, the endless demands, the laughter of Serena and Damien echoing in her ears. Why? She wondered silently. Why did they treat me like this? But the answer was bitterly clear. She was nothing more than a tool, a blood donor, a convenient secret to keep their daughter alive. The suitcase in her hand felt heavier with every step, the rain soaking through the fabric, the wheels stuck in puddles. Her vision blurred. Her legs gave way beneath her. And then, everything went black. When Elara opened her eyes again, the world was different. A soft voice called her name, steady and kind. "Hey, stay with me. You're safe now." Warmth surrounded her as someone shielded her from the rain with a large black umbrella. A strong arm cradled her fragile body. She blinked, struggling to focus, and saw a man, tall, with sharp eyes full of concern, looking down at her. Who are you?" she whispered, voice barely audible. My name's Cashin, he said gently. You're not alone anymore. The city lights blurred around them as Cashin carefully lifted her into the back seat of a sleek black car. Elara felt herself sinking into the leather seat, her body too weak to protest. Cashin held the umbrella over her head one last time before closing the door, then the car sped off into the night. In the sterile calm of the hospital, Elara slowly regained consciousness. The harsh fluorescent lights above made her squint. A soft hand squeezed hers gently. Welcome back, a warm female voice whispered. Elara turned her head and saw a woman sitting beside her bed, eyes shimmering with tears. I'm Evelyn, the woman said, her voice thick with emotion. I'm your mother. Beside her stood two men, tall and strong, yet their faces carried the weight of a long, painful search. One of them stepped forward, voice low but filled with a quiet strength. I'm Nathaniel. This is your brother, Cashin. Elara's mind swirled with confusion and disbelief. Mother, brother? Her voice cracked, disbelief thick in her throat. Evelyn nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. You are Seraphina Rosenvale, she said softly. Our daughter. We lost you when you were just 3. The words struck Elara like a thunderclap. Lost me, she repeated, struggling to comprehend. Nathaniel's eyes glistened with a mixture of sorrow and determination. Your disappearance was a cruel act, someone wanted to hurt us through you. We never stopped looking. Cashin's jaw tightened. And when we found out you were in that orphanage, we came immediately. But you had already been taken in by the Calderons. Evelyn's hands trembled as she held Elara's. We had the photo, but seeing you now, it's a miracle. Elara's heart pounded, conflicting emotions roiling inside her. A part of her wanted to scream, to run away, to refuse to believe it. But deep down, a tiny flame of hope flickered. Then Evelyn's voice softened. What happened to you? Who did this? Elara's lips quivered as the dam broke. All the pain, the years of abuse, the endless loneliness poured out in desperate sobs. They listened, her new family, her true family, with grief and rage. Cashin's eyes darkened. They'll pay for what they did. Elara wiped her tears, voice firm despite the tremble. No. I will finish this myself. The storm outside had passed, but inside Elara, a new storm was rising, a storm of courage, resilience, and the promise of justice. Her life as Elara Winslow was over. Now, she was Seraphina Rosenvale, and her journey was just beginning. The sterile white of the hospital room slowly came into focus as Elara's eyelids fluttered open. She blinked against the harsh light, the unfamiliar surroundings pressing down on her fragile consciousness. But what anchored her was the warmth, a pair of arms holding her close, gentle and unwavering. Elara, a soft voice whispered, trembling with emotion. Her head turned, heavy but curious, to find a woman clutching her like a lifeline. Tears streamed down the woman's face, mixing with her whispered apology. My dear Seraphina, my daughter, the woman sobbed. I'm so sorry for everything. For a moment, Elara froze. Seraphina? The name hung in the air like a fragile thread between reality and disbelief. The woman's name was Evelyn, the voice full of pain and hope. Next to her stood a man, Nathaniel, his eyes glistening with restrained grief, his hands clenched into tight fists to contain the storm within. And then, another presence, tall, imposing, eyes burning with fierce protectiveness, Cashin, the man who had saved her from the rain-soaked streets. His gaze fixed on her, filled with anger and sorrow as he took in the bruises and weariness etched on her face. Elara, Cashin's voice was low, almost growling. Who did this to you? She wanted to speak, but the flood of emotions held her tongue. Instead, Evelyn continued, her voice steady despite the tears. You're not who they told you. You're Seraphina Rosenvale. Our daughter. Our lost child. The weight of the words crushed her, yet at the same time, ignited a spark deep within. Nathaniel stepped forward, voice gentle but firm. You were taken from us when you were just 3 years old. A cruel act, meant to destroy our family. Evelyn took a shaky breath, her hands trembling as she held Elara's. For 15 years, we searched. We never stopped. Until finally, a breakthrough, the trail led us to that orphanage. Your name was there, on a file, but before we could come for you, you were already taken in by the Calderons. Cashin's eyes darkened. When we learned you were abandoned, we rushed to find you. And fate brought us to that night, when we saw you, collapsing in the rain. The truth was overwhelming, Elara's mind spun, questions and pain colliding. Who were these people? Could she trust them? And what did this mean for the years she had suffered? Evelyn's voice cracked as she asked the question that had haunted her since the moment they found Elara. Who has hurt you like this? Who did this to my daughter? Tears broke free from Elara's eyes as the walls she had built crumbled. She poured out the years of torment, the cold indifference, the endless demands for blood, the humiliation at the hands of Serena and Damien, the loneliness that had nearly broken her. I was a tool, a secret kept alive only to save Serena. They never cared for me, never loved me, she confessed, voice raw but steady. Cassion's fists clenched at his sides, fury simmering beneath his composed exterior. They won't get away with this, he vowed. I'll make sure they pay. Elara's gaze hardened, a fire igniting within her weary soul. No, she said quietly but firmly. I want to finish this, myself. For a moment, silence settled, a heavy pause filled with unspoken understanding. Evelyn reached out, brushing damp strands of hair from Elara's face. We are here now, Seraphina. You are not alone. Nathaniel nodded. And we will help you find justice, on your terms. Cassion's voice softened, the anger replaced by steadfast loyalty. Whatever you need, I'm with you. Elara closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of their words settle in her heart. The journey ahead was daunting, but for the first time, she was not alone. As days passed, Elara, now Seraphina Rosenvale, began to rebuild herself under the careful care of her true family. The cold wounds left by the Calderons still throbbed beneath the surface, but the warmth and love surrounding her breathed life back into her fragile spirit. She learned the truth of her past in painful fragments, pieced together from conversations and documents. The kidnapping, the betrayal, the cruel manipulation that kept her in the shadows, all painted a picture of a life stolen and a family torn apart. But beyond the pain, there was resolve. A determination that she would reclaim her name, her dignity, and her future. One evening, as Evelyn sat by her bedside, Seraphina spoke softly. Why did they do this? Why keep me alive just to use me like that? Evelyn sighed, sadness etched deep in her eyes. Because Serena's life depended on your blood. But to them, you were nothing more than a means to an end. Seraphina swallowed hard, tears threatening again. But I am not their possession. I am their reckoning. Cassion entered the room, his presence commanding yet tender. You're stronger than you know, he said. And we'll stand with you every step of the way. The bond between them grew, no longer strangers, but family forged through pain and resilience. Together, they began the painstaking process of uncovering the secrets hidden within the Calderon Empire, gathering evidence, reaching out to allies, and preparing for the reckoning that would bring the truth into the light. And in the quiet moments, Seraphina looked out over the city skyline, letting the night air wash over her. Her past had been stolen, her innocence shattered, but her future was hers to claim. With every breath, she vowed silently, I will rise. I will fight. And I will not be broken. The hospital room faded behind her like a distant nightmare as Seraphina Rosenvale stepped into the grand halls of the Rosenvale estate. The heavy doors closed behind her, sealing away the past of pain and betrayal, and ushering in a new chapter filled with quiet strength and unyielding resolve. Gone was the fragile girl once known as Elara Winslow, the child who had suffered in silence, a pawn in the Calderons' ruthless game. Now, Seraphina bore the weight and the pride of her true name, a name that carried the legacy of power, wealth, and justice. The walls of the Rosenvale mansion whispered of history and influence, but for Seraphina, they also promised protection. Her parents, Evelyn and Nathaniel, watched over her with a tender vigilance, while Cassion, her brother by blood and guardian by choice, became her fiercest ally. Their unwavering support was a balm to her wounded spirit. Yet Seraphina knew healing wasn't enough. She had to transform, grow stronger, sharper, more capable. The days of being victimized were over. Now, she was preparing to take back everything stolen from her. Today, you start learning what it truly means to be a Rosenvale, Cassion told her one afternoon as she stood before the towering bookshelf in their private study. His tone was firm but encouraging. This isn't just about wealth. It's about strategy, resilience, and knowing when to strike. Seraphina nodded, absorbing every lesson with determination. Etiquette classes, public speaking sessions, and strategic thinking workshops filled her days. Every interaction was a step toward reclaiming her identity, every word learned a weapon against those who had tried to break her. But education was only part of the battle. Together, she and Cassion began digging into the shadows of the Calderon Empire. Seraphina's memories of her 10 years under their roof, years she once wished to forget, became an unexpected advantage. She recalled conversations, secret meetings, and subtle exchanges that now revealed a sinister web of corruption. Money laundering, Cassion whispered as they sifted through stacks of documents late into the night. Fake property sales, inflated valuations, shell companies. It's all here. Seraphina's eyes narrowed, scanning the files. They used their real estate empire as a front. Buying and selling properties that didn't exist, just to clean dirty money. And the bank loans, Cassion added. They inflated property values to manipulate loans and siphon funds. Her heart pounded as she realized the scope of their deception. The Calderons weren't just cold-hearted foster parents, they were criminals hiding behind the glossy facade of wealth and power. Then came a breakthrough. A secretary who had worked closely with the Calderons quietly reached out. Once loyal, she had turned against them after suffering their cruelty. Her courage became Seraphina's secret weapon. "She's giving us internal memos, transaction records, everything," Cashin said, a rare smile touching his lips. Seraphina stared at the files, feeling a surge of vindication. This was no longer a one-sided fight. Justice was within reach. Despite the growing evidence, Seraphina remained cautious. The Calderons were dangerous, their reach vast. But she had transformed from a frightened girl into a calculated force. One evening, as the city lights shimmered through the mansion's expansive windows, Seraphina confided in Cashin. "I used to think my blood was a curse," she said quietly, "but now I see it's the key to unlocking the truth." Cashin nodded. "And with that truth, we'll bring them down." The bond between them deepened, rooted in shared pain and the unspoken promise of retribution. As Seraphina's confidence grew, so did her resolve to face her past head-on, not as a victim, but as a woman ready to reclaim her destiny. The grand ballroom was buzzing with anticipation, a swirling sea of glittering gowns, tailored tuxedos, and flashing cameras. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow over the crowd, refracting light like diamonds scattered across polished marble floors. This was the city's most exclusive event, the Calderon family's highly publicized launch of their newest real estate project. The crème de la crème of society had gathered, wealthy investors, influential journalists, and local dignitaries, all eager to witness another chapter in the Calderon empire. But tonight, the spotlight would belong to someone unexpected. As the orchestra's final notes lingered in the air, a hush swept over the room. The heavy doors swung open with quiet authority, revealing Seraphina Rosenvale. Her entrance was nothing short of breathtaking. Draped in an elegant midnight blue gown that hugged her slender frame, Seraphina carried herself with a poised confidence that seemed to command the very air around her. Gone was the fragile Elara Winslow, the mistreated foster child who had suffered silently for years. In her place stood a woman transformed, radiant, composed, and unapologetically regal. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, daring anyone to challenge her presence. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Who is she?" "That's the daughter of the Rosenvale family." "The Rosenvales? What's she doing here?" At the far end of the room, the Calderon family gathered, their laughter cutting through the murmur like ice. Victoria Calderon's smile was tight, forced. Alexander Calderon's jaw clenched imperceptibly. But it was Serena who made no effort to hide her contempt. "You think you belong here?" Serena's voice was sharp, dripping with disdain as she stared directly at Seraphina. "What gives you the right to show up at our event?" Seraphina's lips curved into a knowing smile as she reached into the clutch she carried. Slowly, deliberately, she pulled out a crisp, embossed invitation. "Is this not enough proof?" she said calmly, extending the card toward Serena. Serena's eyes narrowed as she snatched the invitation from Seraphina's hand. She scanned it quickly, her lips curling into a cruel laugh. "Fake. This has to be fake. No Rosenvale would stoop to such a stunt." Seraphina's smile deepened, unbothered by the mockery. "Am I to take it that you've never doubted me before, Serena? Or are you simply scared of what this means?" Before Serena could react, a strong hand gripped her wrist, Cashin Rosenvale. His glare was icy, authoritative. "Let go of her," Cashin said, voice low but commanding. Serena jerked her arm back but not without a startled glance. "Who do you think you are? You have no right to lay hands on me." Cashin's eyes blazed with fury. "I'm the man who won't tolerate anyone disrespecting my family. And that includes you." The crowd hushed, sensing the tension spike. Murmurs rippled, and cameras pivoted, capturing every moment. Damien Calderon stepped forward, trying to reclaim control with a forced chuckle. "Is this really necessary, Cashin? This isn't a playground brawl." But Cashin was unwavering. "This is a warning." Clearing his throat, he turned to address the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to formally introduce Seraphina Rosenvale, heir to the Rosenvale Global Holdings." The declaration rippled through the room like an electric charge. Eyes widened, cameras snapped frantically, and whispers erupted into a chorus of speculation. Seraphina held her head high, meeting every gaze with steady resolve. At that moment, the MC stepped up to the podium, preparing to unveil the Calderon's latest project. The room's attention shifted toward the large LED screen that dominated the far wall. But before the presentation could begin, the screen flickered. The polished images of luxury apartments and sleek skyscrapers dissolved into something far more sinister. A video began to play, startling the audience into silence. The footage was damning. Hidden camera shots revealed clandestine meetings, hands exchanging envelopes thick with cash. Documents flashed across the screen, ledgers filled with suspicious entries, dates, and amounts that made it clear the Calderons had been laundering money under the guise of legitimate real estate deals. A black notebook was shown next, its pages marked with detailed accounts of illicit transactions, bribes, and contacts in the criminal underworld. Then, the room gasped as video clips played of Serena herself, orchestrating cruel schemes against Elara. In one clip, she sneered, ordering others to spread vicious rumors. Another showed Damien broadcasting live, mocking Elara's appearance and belittling her in front of their peers. The damning evidence didn't stop there. Financial statements exposed fake property sales, inflated prices, and manipulated loans, proof of a sprawling web of corruption. Journalists instinctively reached for their phones, already capturing the unfolding scandal. The room erupted into chaos. Whispers turned into shouts. Some guests rushed toward exits, while others jostled for position near the Calderon family, desperate for answers. Suddenly, the sharp sound of handcuffs clicking echoed through the hall. Law enforcement officers appeared, moving swiftly to detain Alexander, Victoria, Damien, and Serena Calderon. Their faces, once so full of arrogant confidence, now betrayed shock and fear. Serena screamed, fury erupting like wildfire. "Elara! You think you can ruin us? You don't know what you're up against." Seraphina stood tall, her voice steady and clear, cutting through the din. "My name is Seraphina Rosenvale," she declared, "and this is just the beginning." The guests turned to look, the room finally understanding that the frail foster child they once pitted had become a force to be reckoned with. The Calderons were led away, their empire crumbling in front of an audience that would never forget this night. Seraphina's heart pounded, not just from victory, but from the journey that had brought her here. Every scar, every betrayal had fueled this moment. Cashin approached her, pride evident in his gaze. "This is what justice looks like," he said softly. Seraphina nodded, feeling a wave of relief mixed with a fierce hunger for what came next. "Let them fall," she whispered. "Now, we rebuild." The night air was thick with change, the kind of transformation that only comes after years of darkness. Seraphina Rosenvale had claimed her place. And no one could take it away. The echoes of handcuffs snapping shut still reverberated in the grand hall as the Calderon family was led away, their empire collapsing like a house of cards. The city's most ruthless real estate dynasty, once untouchable, was now under investigation, their assets frozen, their names dragged through the mud by the very people they had sought to control. For Seraphina Rosenvale, the storm had passed, but the calm that followed was far from quiet. The Rosenvale estate, a sprawling sanctuary of polished marble and sunlit gardens, had become her refuge. Here, she was no longer Elara Winslow, the forgotten foster child, the unwilling blood donor. She was Seraphina, daughter of Nathaniel and Evelyn Rosenvale, sister to Cashin, and an heiress not just by name but by right. The first days back were a fragile dance. Her body still bore the marks of years spent sacrificing herself for a family that never loved her. Her spirit, though scarred, was slowly beginning to heal. Nathaniel, stoic as ever, spoke little but his presence was a quiet reassurance. Evelyn's gentle touch and unwavering faith wrapped around Seraphina like a warm blanket. Cashin was a constant shadow, protective, patient, and ever watchful. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting a golden glow over the estate, Seraphina found herself in the library with Cashin. Shelves lined with leather-bound books stood as silent witnesses to their conversation. "Do you think it's really over?" Seraphina asked quietly, tracing the spine of an old book. Cashin looked up, eyes clear and determined. "For now. But this is just the beginning of rebuilding. You've taken the first step, now it's time to reclaim your life." She nodded, the weight of his words sinking in. For so long, she had lived in the shadows of others' cruelty. Now, she was stepping into the light, ready to write her own story. College was the next chapter. Unlike her years of forced obedience and silent suffering, this time Seraphina chose her path. She enrolled in a university program that had always fascinated her, psychology. The study of the mind, the heart, the very essence of human resilience. Every lecture was a revelation. Every assignment a step towards understanding not only others but herself. Outside the classroom, her bond with Cashin deepened. No longer just siblings by blood, their connection was fortified by shared trials and mutual respect. They laughed, debated, and confided in each other like never before. One afternoon, as they strolled through the campus park, Cashin broke the comfortable silence. "You know," he began, a rare softness in his voice, "I've seen you grow stronger than I ever imagined. The girl who once hid behind walls is now someone who commands respect." Seraphina smiled, a flicker of warmth lighting her eyes. "I had no choice but to be strong." He chuckled. "Still, it's inspiring. And you're not alone anymore." Back home, Evelyn watched her daughter with quiet pride. "Healing isn't linear," she told Seraphina one night, "but with love, it becomes possible." Seraphina looked out her bedroom window at the star-studded sky, feeling the truth of those words settle in her heart. The pain of her past remained, a shadow she could never fully escape, but it no longer defined her. One evening, surrounded by family, she finally voiced what had long been unspoken. "They took my childhood," she said softly, her voice steady despite the emotion beneath, "but they will never take my future." Nathaniel reached out, squeezing her hand firmly. "And we'll be with you every step of the way." Cashin smiled, a rare genuine warmth in his eyes. "Together, we'll face whatever comes next." As the stars blinked overhead, Seraphina felt a profound sense of peace. Her journey was far from over, but for the first time in her life, she was the author of her destiny. No longer a victim, she was a survivor, a woman reborn from the ashes of her past, ready to embrace the promise of tomorrow.